cabin was gone. Not burned down in some neat collapse, but torn apart, blackened timbers clawing at the sky like the fingers of a dead thing. Smoke still curled from the wreck, sharp in the lungs, bitter on the tongue. And in the ruins, silence, broken only by the crack of cooling wood. He heard it. A sound too soft to be the wind. A ragged breath. The mountain man dropped his rifle in the ash and clawed through the wreckage with his bare hands. Splinters cut deep, char flaked beneath his nails. He didn't stop. Every second he dug felt like dragging someone back from the edge of hell. Then he saw her. Half buried under a beam, her dress burned, her hair matted with soot, her face a mask of grey. For a heartbeat he thought she was gone, nothing but another body to lay in the snow. But when he touched her cheek, heat still lingered, faint, but there. Her lips moved. A whisper, broken, barely human. "Don't leave me." The words weren't a plea. They were a command, carved straight into his chest. He slid his arms beneath her, lifting her from the ash, her body so light it felt wrong, as though the fire had burned away everything but the ghost of her. He pressed her against him, his coat falling over her shoulders, his breath mixing with the smoke as he whispered back, "I'm not letting you go." And in that moment, with the cabin burning down to nothing around them, he swore he'd fight the fire, the cold, and the whole cursed mountain itself before he let her die in his arms. The snow outside hissed when the embers spat from the cabin's wreck. The night air was cruel, but at least it wasn't filled with smoke. He staggered into it, her limp weight in his arms, his boots crunching through the drifts. Her head lolled against his chest, streaking him with soot. He bent his ear to her lips, breath shallow but real. That sound alone was enough to keep his legs moving. The mountain man didn't ask who had left her there, not yet. He'd seen cabins burn before, seen the ruin men left behind when greed or vengeance got too strong to leash. But this wasn't just some frontier feud. No, he knew it in his gut. Whoever had done this wanted her gone, erased like ash on the wind. Her body shook, a faint tremor against him. He stopped, pulling his coat tighter around her, wrapping her in the last warmth he owned. "You hold on," he muttered. "I'll carry the rest." The snowstorm whispered back, rattling the pines. It felt like the whole mountain was watching, waiting to see if he'd make good on that promise. He pushed on toward the line of dark trees. Shelter, water. A place he could lay her down without the sky raining death on them both. Every step was war, against the cold, against the fire that still burned in his lungs, against the doubt gnawing at him. Then she stirred. A small sound, hoarse and cracked, came from her throat. Why didn't they finish it? He stopped dead. The question chilled him more than the snow ever could. He bent his head low, his voice steady, though his jaw tightened with rage. Because they don't know what kind of fight you've still got left in you. But even as he said it, a darker thought twisted through him. Whoever they were, maybe they hadn't been done with her at all. Maybe this fire was just the first act. And as he carried her deeper into the pines, he knew this mountain wasn't done with them yet. The pines swallowed them whole. Snow clung heavy on the branches, bending them down like mourners over a grave. Each gust sent a powdery drift tumbling across his path, but the mountain man kept on, his boots breaking trail through the wilderness. The woman stirred again, her voice rasped out of her like wind through splintered boards. "Don't take me back." He crouched, shifting her height so her face angled toward him. Beneath the soot and ash, her eyes flickered open, pale and fevered, searching for something that wasn't there. "I'm not taking you back," he said firmly. I'm taking you forward." Her lips cracked into something close to a smile, though it looked painful. Then her head dropped against his chest again, too weak to answer. He moved faster, shelter first, questions later. He found a lean-to of fallen timber at the edge of a ravine. It wasn't much, but it was something. He laid her down, brushing the snow away with rough hands, and worked quickly to build a fire. Sparks caught on dry bark he'd kept wrapped in oilcloth. Soon a tongue of flame licked up, orange against the endless white. Her face glowed in the firelight, streaked with soot. He pressed his canteen to her lips. She drank, just barely, a few drops trembling down her chin. "Who left you in that fire?" he asked quietly. For a long moment, she didn't answer. The wind hissed through the trees. Then her voice cracked, a whisper made for secrets. "They wore masks, 3 of them, one with a scar down his hand. They didn't want me to see." Her breath broke, her body shivering hard against the blanket he'd wrapped around her. The mountain man sat back, jaw locked tight. He knew this country's shadows, men who hid their faces in the dark, men who burned whole families just to bury a truth. But this wasn't just about her. No, if she'd seen what they'd done, or worse, if she knew something they feared, then she wasn't just a victim, she was a target still. The fire cracked, throwing sparks upward like tiny souls clawing for the sky. He looked at her again, her face softening in the glow as her eyes closed. Ash and blood made her look fragile, but there was something fierce underneath, something that made him believe she hadn't told him everything yet. The mountain man adjusted the firewood, then reached for his rifle, laying it across his lap. His voice was low, but it carried a promise. "They'll come back for you, but I'll be waiting." The fire burned low, a circle of trembling light against the press of night. Snow sifted down steadily, whispering as it fell, cloaking the world in silence. The mountain man fed another branch into the flames, watching it catch, listening to the small pop as sap turned to steam. She stirred again, her breath rattled. When her eyes opened this time, they seemed clearer, though shadows lingered deep inside them. "You should leave me," she whispered. He shook his head once. "I don't leave folks in the snow, not while they're still breathing." Her hand lifted weakly from beneath the blanket, fingers clawing for his sleeve. She gripped it with surprising strength, her nails biting through the wool. "You don't understand. They'll come. They always come back." He held her gaze, steady as stone. "Then let them come. Fire's warm, rifles loaded. I've faced worse." But even as he said it, he glanced into the dark beyond the flames' reach. The pines stood thick, their trunks like silent watchmen, their crowns swaying under the weight of storm. Too many shadows, too many places for eyes to hide. The woman's voice trembled. "You don't know them. They burned the cabin because of me. Because I heard something I wasn't meant to. A name." Her words trailed into the night, and he leaned closer. "Whose name?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. She shut her eyes, shaking her head as though even speaking it would draw death out of the trees. The mountain man leaned back, jaw set. Fear this sharp didn't come from nowhere. Whoever had done this, they weren't simple marauders or drunk hands looking for trouble. No, this was something colder, something planned. The fire flickered. Snow hissed where it touched the coals. Then, crack. A sound in the woods. Faint. Careful. Too careful. The mountain man's hand moved without thought, pulling the rifle into his arms. He froze, listening. The woo-oon. Man's breathing quickened under the blanket, her wide eyes reflecting firelight. Another sound. A branch breaking under weight. Closer this time. He raised a finger to his lips, motioning her to silence. The flames threw dancing shapes onto the snow, blurring the line between shadow and man. But he knew. Someone was out there, watching. And the night, which had seemed endless already, suddenly felt like a trap closing tight around them both. The night was too quiet after that sound. Not the kind of quiet that comes from peace. This was the quiet of things holding their breath. The mountain man's finger rested along the rifle's stock, steady, though his heart drummed against his ribs. His eyes searched the dark between the trees, where the firelight couldn't reach. "Stay down," he whispered to her. She obeyed, drawing the blanket higher over her face, her body trembling beneath its weight. Her voice slipped out, thin as thread. "They don't stop. They don't sleep. They'll circle until the fire dies. A gust of wind bent the flames sideways, sending sparks spinning into the black. And in that flicker, just for a heartbeat, he saw it. A shape, human or near enough to it. Tall, unmoving, set against the pines. Then it was gone. His hand tightened on the rifle. He rose slowly to his feet, boots crunching in the snow. The world around the fire seemed alive now, every branch a threat, every shadow a figure. Another crack, closer. He swung the rifle toward the sound. The fire hissed and flared as if urging him to shoot, but nothing stepped forward. "Show yourself," he growled, low and dangerous. Silence answered him. And then laughter, thin, cruel, carried by the wind, so he couldn't tell if it came from near or far. The kind of sound that didn't belong in any honest throat. The woman whimpered, burying her face against the earth. "I told you," she whispered. "I told you they'd come." The mountain man's jaw locked. He felt the fire at his back warm and vulnerable, and the woods before him cold and endless. Whoever, or whatever, was out there knew how to play patience. Still, he raised his voice, letting it cut through the trees. "You want her? You'll have to come through me." The wind carried his words away, swallowed by the forest. Then, without warning, something flew from the dark. A stone, hurled with force, striking the fire and scattering glowing embers across the snow. Sparks hissed out, but some clung to wood and cloth, threatening to smother their only light. The woman cried out. The mountain man stamped the embers back into place, shoving more branches onto the flame until it roared again, fighting the dark. When he lifted his head, his voice was a growl. "All right, you want a fight? You found one." The laughter came again, closer now. The shadows shifted, and for the first time he saw more than one shape moving between the trees. They weren't circling anymore. They were closing in. The fire roared, but the circle of light it threw now felt too small, too fragile, as if the night itself pressed against it, eager to smother it out. The mountain man braced his rifle, eyes darting at the tree line where those figures shifted. His breath came slow, controlled, but his body thrummed with readiness. The woman clutched the blanket around her shoulders, whispering a prayer that tangled into sobs. She rocked slightly, as if rhythm alone could shield her. Then, movement. One of the shadows broke from the line of trees. It came fast, not running but sliding, gliding across the snow like no man he'd ever seen. The firelight caught its outline, and his stomach clenched. Too thin, too tall, its limbs bent wrong. The rifle cracked. Flames spouted from the barrel, the shot splitting the night. The figure jerked, staggered, but it didn't fall. It twisted away, retreating into the dark, leaving only silence behind. Another sound followed, not laughter this time, a hiss, low and unearthly, echoing from every direction. On at once, the forest answered back. "They're angry," the woman whispered, her voice hoarse. "You've wounded one." He ignored her, ramming another cartridge into the chamber. "Good. Let 'em be. Let 'em be angry." But the hiss grew louder, multiplied. More shapes swarmed at the edges, weaving in and out of sight, testing the light's boundary. He saw their eyes then, faint glimmers, like frost catching a stray beam. Dozens of them. The fire popped, a log breaking in two, sending sparks skyward. For a split second, the light faltered. That was when one of them struck. It lunged from the side, fast as lightning. The mountain man swung the rifle like a club, the butt connecting with something that crunched beneath it. A shriek ripped through the trees, high and feral. The creature fell back into the dark, leaving a smear in the snow. But another came, then another. Hands, or claws, scraped the earth, just shy of the fire's glow. The woman screamed, shrinking down, clutching her face. "They'll tear us apart," she sobbed. "Not while I'm standing," he growled, kicking snow at the fire to send sparks high, trying to drive them back. The hiss turned to a chorus. They circled, pressing closer. He fired again, the crack tearing the night. A shadow collapsed, writhing, before vanishing into the trees. but there were too many. The mountain man spat into the snow, sweat running cold down his back despite the fire's heat. His arms ached from the rifle's recoil, but his eyes never left the shifting dark. The woman's sobs quieted, but not from comfort. She sat rigid, rocking with her hands pressed to her mouth. Her eyes gleamed too wide, reflecting the fire like glass. "They won't stop," she whispered, voice breaking. "Not till I'm gone." He glanced at her, jaw tightening. "You mean dead?" Her head moved slowly side to side. "Not dead. Taken back." The words slid into him like ice. He lowered the rifle slightly, his heart pounding harder now than when he faced the creatures. "Back where?" She didn't answer at first. Her gaze was locked on the tree line, where a doze. Sets of pale eyes blinked in unison. "They came when I was a child," she said finally, her voice flat, distant. "Always in the winter, always when the nights stretched longest. They whispered through the walls, through the cracks in the floorboards. My mother told me not to listen, but I did. Their voices were so sweet. They promised me I would never be cold, never be hungry again." Her lip trembled. "The night the cabin burned, it was them. They said it was time. I ran. I shouldn't have run." The mountain man stared, the rifle heavy in his hands. "You're telling me those things out there are mine?" Her whisper sliced across his words. "They marked me before I even knew how to pray. I don't belong to you, or this fire, or this world. I belong to them." The hiss in the trees swelled, as if her admission fed it. The shapes pressed closer, their pale glimmers multiplying until the woods looked like a sky full of stars had fallen and taken root. The man's throat tightened. He wanted to curse, to shout, to rage at her for keeping this truth until now, but the look on her face stopped him. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was mourning. He shoved another log onto the fire, sparks leaping. "Maybe you belong to them," he growled, "but I'll be damned if I hand you over." The woman turned, meeting his eyes for the first time since the night began. There was something there, not hope, not quite, but a fragile question. "Why?" she asked softly. "Because," he said, lifting the rifle again, "you're still breathing." A scream shattered the night, closer than before. One of the creatures lunged, breaking into the firelight at last. Its face was wrong, stretched. A pale mask where a human face should have been, mouth yawning too wide. And now, he could see its eyes. They weren't empty. They were pleading. And in that moment, he knew the fire wouldn't last till dawn. The mountain man spat into the snow, sweat running cold down his back despite the fire's heat. His arms ached from the rifle's recoil, but his eyes never left the shifting dark. The woman's sobs quieted, but not from comfort. She sat rigid, rocking with her hands pressed to her mouth. Her eyes gleamed too wide, reflecting the fire like glass. "They won't stop," she whispered, voice breaking. "Not till I'm gone." He glanced at her, jaw tightening. "You mean dead?" Her head moved slowly side to side. "Not dead. Taken back." The words slid into him like ice. He lowered the rifle slightly, his heart pounding harder now than when he faced the creatures. "Back where?" She didn't answer at first. Her gaze was locked on the tree line where a dozen sets of pale eyes blinked in unison. "They came when I was a child," she said finally, her voice flat, distant. "Always in the winter, always when the nights stretched longest. They whispered through the walls, through the cracks in the floorboards. My mother told me not to listen, but I did. Their voices were so sweet. They promised me I would never be cold, never be hungry again." Her lip trembled. "The night the cabin burned, it was them. They said it was time. I ran. I shouldn't have run." The mountain man stared, the rifle heavy in his hands. "You're telling me those things out there are mine?" Her whisper sliced across his words. "They marked me before I even knew how to pray. I don't belong to you, or this fire, or this world. I belong to them." The hiss in the trees swelled, as if her admission fed it. The shapes pressed closer, their pale glimmers multiplying until the woods looked like a sky full of stars had fallen and taken root. The man's throat tightened. He wanted to curse, to shout, to rage at her for keeping this truth until now, but the look on her face stopped him. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was more burning. He shoved another log onto the fire, sparks leaping. "Maybe you belong to them," he growled, "but I'll be damned if I hand you over." The woman turned, meeting his eyes for the first time since the night began. There was something there, not hope, not quite, but a fragile question. "Why?" she asked softly. "Because," he said, lifting the rifle again, "you're still breathing." A scream shattered the night, closer than before. One of the creatures lunged, breaking into the firelight at last. Its face was wrong, stretched, a pale mask where a human face should have been, mouth yawning too wide. And now, he could see its eyes. They weren't empty. They were pleading.